And we are back for prepping for winter with the Alayne sample chapter. The Gates of the Moon is hosting a tourney and feast for the Winged Knights, and Sansa's potential betrothed, Harry the Heir, has come. However, Harry and Sansa's first meeting does not go well, with Harry quite rudely calling her a bastard. Sansa, after searching for Littlefinger an entire chapter, locates him and gets some advice on how to attract a man. And now the feast has begun, and let's continue. The feast proved to be everything her father promised. 64 dishes were served in honor of the 64 competitors who had come so far to contest for silver wings before their lord. From the rivers and the lakes came pike and trout and salmon. From the seas, crab and cod and herring. Ducks were there, and capons, peacocks in their plumage, and swans in almond milk. Suckling pigs were served up crackling, with apples in their mouths, and 3 huge aurochs were roasted whole above fire pits in the castle yard, since they were too big to get through the kitchen doors. Loaves of hot bread filled the trestle tables in Lord Nestor's hall, and massive wheels of cheese were brought up from the vaults. The butter was fresh churned, and there were leeks and carrots, roasted onions, beets, turnips, parsnips, and best of all, Lord Nestor's cook prepared a splendid subtlety, a lemon cake in the shape of the giant's lance, 12 feet tall and adorned with an eyrie made of sugar. And so we get a description of the feast, which calls back the many feasts that we've seen in our story. The 64 dishes, of course, echoes Joffrey's wedding with its 77 dishes. A peacock in its plumage calls back the Butterwell Frey feast from the Mystery Night. A giant wheel of cheese calls us back to Ramsay and Arya's wedding. The 3 fire pits brings us to the Dothraki feast where Viserys died. The swan brings us back to the feast that Tyrion and Cersei enjoyed before the Battle of the Blackwater. And a spun sugar dessert reminds us of the feast at Renly's melee and the feast for Balon's swan. There doesn't seem to be anything too particularly noteworthy about most of the food, only that it's luxurious and highlights the group's decadence prior to a coming tragedy. We know that winter and more war is coming, and yet these people live in foolish excess. It's in stark contrast to the starvation that we know is occurring in the north, and the coming doom that we know is going to hit these characters. For me, Alayne thought, as they wheeled it out. Sweetrobin loved lemon cakes too, but only after she told him that they were her favorites. The cake had required every lemon in the Vale, but Peter had promised that he would send to Dorne for more. And here we see that Sansa is becoming cocky and self-centered. Previously, Sansa reveled in the idea that the tourney was all because of her, and that it was a great idea. Of course, we're already getting some hints that the tourney is not going to turn out well. And here she boldly assumes that the lemon cake is for her because she loves lemon cakes. As it turns out, lots of people love lemon cakes. Arya likes lemon cakes, Sam likes lemon cakes, but most importantly, Sweetrobin, the Lord of the Vale, loves lemon cakes. Now back in Alayne 2, A Feast for Crows, Sansa hypothesizes that Sweetrobin, a boy with a known sweet tooth, perhaps likes lemon cakes because she does, but she isn't sure. And now all of a sudden she's quite sure of it for some reason. When it comes down to it, the cake is almost certainly for Sweetrobin, the Lord, yet Sansa thinks it's all for her, Littlefinger's bastard, a girl not even allowed on the dais. Now here we get another reference in our story to where lemons grow. Back in A Storm of Swords, the Brotherhood Without Banners had a discussion about how lemons don't grow in the Riverlands, but south in Dorne. And in the Mercy sample chapter, Raft the Sweetling and a Lannister guard let us know that lemons don't grow in Braavos, but south in Lys, Myr, and Volantis. And here we find out that lemons don't grow in the Vale, but south in Dorne. Quite a bit of emphasis is being put on where lemons grow and don't grow. This is of great significance as Dany remembers a lemon tree at the house with the red door, which she believes is in Braavos, but it's rather clear that lemons grow in the south. Our author has said that the lemon tree issue is of significance, but he hasn't told us how exactly. Many fans, myself included, theorize that there is something wrong with Dany's memory, and that the house with the red door is not actually in Braavos, but further south. There were gifts as well, splendid gifts. Each of the competitors received a cloak of cloth and silver, and a lapis brooch in the shape of a pair of falcon's wings. Fine steel daggers were given to the brothers, fathers, and friends who had come to watch them tilt. For their mothers, sisters, and ladies fair, there were bolts of silk and Mirish lace. And so next we have Littlefinger giving out gifts, or bribes it seems. This gift-giving seems to point to the idea that these games are about more than just securing 8-winged knights as hostages. These gifts are meant to sway the opinions of all attendees. In fact, Littlefinger's generosity is a bit reminiscent of Euron's generosity at the Kingsmoot. And so we have to wonder, what on earth is Littlefinger planning? We did note previously that forming one's own Kingsguard is a rather bold move for Sweetrobin. In fact, it's bordering on treason. And these brooches that are given away are blue lapis lazuli falcons, which are clearly designed to reaffirm allegiance to House Arryn. And it's rather curious that the chapter did begin with Sansa saying that the main barrier preventing a Sweetrobin-Alayne marriage was the fact that she was a bastard, and only a king can remove the taint of bastardy. We have quite a few clues that a kingship for Sweetrobin is in the cards. "Lord Nestor has an open hand," Alayne heard Sir Edmund Breakstone say. "An open hand and a little finger," Lady Waynwood replied with a nod towards Peter Baelish. Breakstone was not slow to take her meaning. The true source of this largesse was not Lord Nestor, but the Lord Protector. So here we get a conversation between some people apparently sitting near Sansa, Edmund Breakstone and Anya Waynwood. I'm a bit surprised Lady Anya is not on the dais, by the way. Perhaps there isn't room. Obviously, Sweetrobin, Littlefinger, Nestor Royce, Miranda Royce, and Albar Royce would be on the dais, as would be some of Littlefinger's closest allies, like Lord Waxley, John Linderley, and Gerald Grafton. And who knows, perhaps Benedor Belmore, who seems to have come over to Littlefinger's camp. So if it's a short dais, there may not be room for Lady Anya. Nonetheless, if Sansa is near Anya Waynwood, it's rather clear that Littlefinger was true to his word and put Sansa in a place of honor. Not the dais, but the next best place. Now the man that Lady Anya is talking to is Sir Edmund Breakstone. We saw his sigil earlier in the yard practicing jousting. House Breakstone has never appeared before this chapter, though interestingly, there is a Breakstone Hill in the north associated with House Flint. When the last course had been served and cleared, the tables were lifted from their trestles to clear the floor for dancing, and musicians were brought in. "Are there no singers?" asked Ben Coldwater. "The little lord cannot abide them," Sir Lyman de Linderley replied. "Not since Marillion." "Ah, that was the man who murdered Lady Lysa, yes?" Alayne spoke up. "His singing pleased her greatly, and she showed him too much favour, perhaps. When she wed my father, he went mad, and pushed her out the moon door. Lord Robert has hated singing ever since. He is still fond of music, though." We next meet Ben Coldwater. Now, we don't know much about the Coldwaters. They came with the Lord's Declarant to face Littlefinger back in Alayne 1, A Feast for Crows, with the other smaller houses like the Shetts and the Tolletts. Yes, Shett, Tollett, Coldwater, there seems to be a bit of bathroom humor going on here. Now, as it happens, the Lord of Coldwater Burn is named Royce Coldwater, which makes one think that the Coldwaters are in good terms with Bronze Jan. And so, like other Shett and Andrew Tollett, it seems Ben Coldwater would make a good Winged Knight hostage. That is, assuming he's competing. Ben Coldwater is never called Sir, which is a bit odd. Yes, non-knights like Jory, the Hound, and Thoros have competed in tourneys without being knights, but it is a rarity. Then again, Littlefinger told Sansa specifically to only dance with knights and not green boys, so it might actually be Sir Ben. Now, Coldwater is talking to Sir Lyman de Linderley, who's probably competing as we saw the Linderley sigil in the yard. Littlefinger already has Terence Linderley serving as Sweetrobin's squire, so there's little need to have Lyman as a winged knight. We then get a mention of Marillion and Sweetrobin's hatred of singers, reportedly because of him. And yet Sweetrobin still loves music, and specifically the harp, which was Marillion's instrument. So why Sweetrobin likes the harp and not singing is a bit of a mystery, and of course Sweetrobin complains of hearing Marillion singing at night at the Eyrie for some reason, despite the man being reportedly dead. Now it should be noted that there are oodles of parallels between Sweetrobin and his cousin Bran, the most obvious being their weirwood thrones, their desire to sleep all of the time, the fact that a maester tried to suppress their dreams with sweet sleep, and their obsession with flying. However, there is another parallel with the connection between Bran and Theon being like the connection between Sweetrobin and Marillion. Keep in mind, back in A Feast for Crows, Marillion's story very much echoes Theon's. He's tortured by Mord and Littlefinger and coerced into playing a role. Littlefinger then washes and dresses him and gets him to falsely confess to the murder of Lysa. And of course Theon was tortured and coerced, washed and dressed up, and forced to play a role at Moat Cailin and Ramsay's wedding. We have two pretty boys kept in dungeons, tortured until they're made ugly, and being left with 7 fingers. In fact, both Theon and Marillion even lie in front of werewoods. And now for some reason, our tortured Theon has become linked with Bran. Bran visits Theon through the werewood, whispering to him. And Marillion, for some reason, is linked with Sweetrobin, singing to him at night. Now granted, who is visiting whom is reversed. Now if the parallels between Bran and Sweetrobin hold to any degree, we should expect to see some sort of telepathic awakening for Sweetrobin, as we've seen with Bran. "As am I," Coldwater said, rising. He offered Alayne his hand. "Would you honor me with this dance, my lady?" "You are very kind," she said, and he led her to the floor. He was the first partner of the evening, but far from the last. Just as Peter had promised, the young knights flocked around her, vying for her favor. After Ben came Andrew Tollett, handsome Sir Byron, red-nosed Sir Morgoth, and Sir Shadrach the Mad Mouse. Then Sir Albar Royce, Miranda's stout dull brother, and Lord Nestor's heir. She danced with all 3 Sunderlands, none of whom had webs between their fingers, though she could not vouch for their toes. Other Shett appeared to pay her slimy compliments as he tread upon her feet, but Sir Targon the Half-Wild proved to be the soul of courtesy. After that, Sir Roland Waynwood swept her up and made her laugh with mocking comments about half the other knights in the hall. His uncle Wallace took a turn as well and tried to do the same, but the words would not come. Alayne finally took pity on him and began to chatter happily to spare him the embarrassment. When the dance was done, she excused herself and went back to her place to have a drink of wine. So Ben Coldwater is the first to ask Sansa to dance. It seems Sansa was sitting near Anya Waynwood, Ben Coldwater, Edmund Breakstone, and Lyman de Linderley. Anya is an older woman, and the hall is likely male-heavy, so it's no wonder that Coldwater asked Sansa to dance. And Andrew Tollett follows. We saw the Tollett sigil earlier in the yard. They are sympathetic with the Lord's Declarant, so Andrew would likely be a good winged knight hostage. After that, we get all 3 of Littlefinger's hedge knight hired cronies. We have Byron the Beautiful, Morgoth the Merry, and Shadrach the Mad Mouse. Now it's interesting that the 3 hedge knights go one after the other to ask Sansa for a dance, which makes me think that Littlefinger ordered them to dance with Sansa to make her look more desirable. Our author, by the way, is an enormous fan of Lord Byron the poet, and Byron the Beautiful is almost certainly a reference to Byron's poem She Walks in Beauty, which is a poem heavily referenced in our author's novel Fever Dream. Now there has been quite a bit of speculation among fans on whether Byron and Morgoth are other characters in disguise, and there's a question of whether or not they're working with Sir Shadrach or just happen to be hired by Littlefinger at the same time. Sadly, we have been given very little information to work with in trying to determine who Byron and Morgoth would be, or if they're aligned with the Mad Mouse. Shadrach was open to teaming up with Brienne, so perhaps he's open to teaming up with others. As for secret identities, there is a theory that Morgoth is the elder brother based on them both having a red nose. However, Morgoth has a thick beard, and Shadrach, if he did go to the Vale over land, would have passed by Salt Pans and the Quiet Isle well ahead of Brienne. Brienne, if you recall, traveled all the way to Crackclaw Point and back, and then met the elder brother. So Byron and Morgoth for now seem to be Byron and Morgoth. After the 3 hedge knights, the floodgates are opened, and Sansa dances with 8 more men. There's Albar Royce of the junior branch, whose house Littlefinger thinks he has in his pocket. Miranda likely knows who Sansa is, but we don't know about her brother. Albar would not be useful as a winged knight. All 3 Sunderlands who people think are bad at jousting are next, and I do believe their jousting ability will be very relevant, and we will talk about this later on. The Sunderlands control access to White Harbor, the mouth of the North, and are notable Blackfyre supporters. They might be useful allies, but I think they were invited specifically because they're perceived to be bad at jousting. Our next dancer is other Shett, whose house, like House Coldwater and House Tollett, were aligned with the Lord's Declarant, and therefore would make a good winged knight hostage. After Shett, our next dancer is the mysterious Targon the Half-Wild. Strangely, Sansa finds him courteous and not wild. We don't know anything about this Targon, but the name Half-Wild is immediately exposed as misnomer. He's not wild at all, which makes me think that instead of being half-wild, that is, impetuous and crazy, he's instead half-wild, as in someone who's half-house wild. Now it would stand to reason that one would only bring up the half if it was the mother that was the half rather than the father. If the father were wild, the character would just be wild. And as it happens, we know of only one character in our story with a wild mother. Aegon Bloodborne Frey. Now, if that name is unfamiliar to you, it's because he's never appeared in the story and he's never been mentioned in the story. He's the son of Aenys Frey and Tyanna Wild, and he's an outlaw apparently. And the only reason we know this information is that he was listed in the appendices 4 times. Of course, mysterious renegade outlaw Frey, who has appeared in the appendices since A Clash of Kings, has made quite a few fans wonder when he will enter the story. Perhaps we can hope that Targon the Half-Wild is Aegon Bloodborne the Half-Wild. And finally, Sansa dances with Roland and Wallace Waynwood, our possible horse-faced heirs to Winterfell. Sansa's second meeting with the Waynwoods seems to go much like the first. Roland acted like a smooth asshole, making fun of everyone, and Sansa seemed to like it. Wallace stuttered, and so Sansa instead talked to make him feel more comfortable. We again see Sansa performing well with the Waynwoods, who, again, are likely the real power players in this situation. They are likely the heirs to Winterfell, they have important connections with the Freys and the Riverlands, they are important members of the Lord's Declarant, and they control Harry. It's no wonder that Miranda was paying close attention to them, and it's somewhat perplexing that Littlefinger is not. And there he stood, Harry the heir himself, tall, handsome, scowling. "Lady Alayne, may I partner you in this dance?" She considered that a moment. "No, I don't think so." Color rose to his cheeks. "I was unforgivably rude to you in the yard. You must forgive me." "Must?" She tossed her hair, took a sip of wine, made him wait. "How can you forgive someone who is unforgivably rude? Will you explain that to me, sir?" Sir Harold looked confused. "Please, one dance." "Charm him, entrance him, bewitch him." "If you insist." And so next we get Harry the heir asking Sansa to dance. Now he has just seen 13 other men dance with her, though I'm not certain Harry is feeling jealous. He wears a scowl, implying he's angry. Littlefinger said that Anya would require him to dance once with Sansa, and it should be noted that Harry's companions, Roland and Wallace, have just finished dancing with her. It appears that Harry is doing what is required of him. We can even compare the courtesy of Ben Coldwater with that of Harry the heir. Coldwater requests the honor of dancing with Sansa. Harry asks to partner her in a dance. Also note his apology for rudeness. He acknowledges that he was rude and says, "You must forgive me." Those aren't really the words of someone showing regret. Sansa certainly has her work cut out for her in winning him over. He nodded, offered his arm, led her out onto the floor. As they waited for the music to resume, Alayne glanced at the dais where Lord Robert sat staring at them. "Please," she prayed, "don't let him start to twitch and shake. Not here. Not now." Maester Coleman would have made certain that he drank a strong dose of sweet milk before the feast, but even so. So although Harry doesn't seem to have grown jealous, we are told who likely has. Sweetrobin. Sweetrobin is staring at them, and I imagine he's been staring at Sansa through 13 dances as well. Of course, we are reminded of Sweetrobin's mother, Lysa, who became enraged when seeing Littlefinger dance 6 dances with Cat. And we are perhaps reminded of Howland Reed watching Ashara Dane dance with 4 different men at the Harrenhal tourney. Sweetrobin endures 14. Now we know that Sweetrobin is a jealous boy. Coming down the mountain, a mere joke about Sansa liking a squire is interrupted by Sweetrobin saying that Alayne is his. And in this chapter we discover that Sweetrobin hates Harry the heir, believing him a phony who is waiting for him to die. And Harry's sigil seems to show that yes, he is waiting for Sweetrobin to die. Watching this dance between Harry and Sansa should be absolute torture for our little lord. Now we get a mention of Coleman dousing Sweetrobin with sweet sleep before the feast. This is very serious, as Sweetrobin has been taking massive doses of sweet sleep. It's so much so that it's a wonder that Sweetrobin isn't dead already. Keep in mind, the waif at the House of Black and White gives us the proper dosage for sweet sleep. A few grains is to stop shaking, a pinch is to knock someone out, 3 pinches put someone in a coma or kills them, and that's for a full-grown man. Sweetrobin is a small boy, and Maester Coleman has screwed up the dosage. He's been giving Sweetrobin a pinch of sweet sleep as a dose, the amount to knock out a full-grown man. Honestly, someone Sweetrobin's size should have died from a single pinch of sweet sleep. Now, despite the mistake on dosage, Coleman is somewhat aware of the dangers of sweet sleep, warning that it doesn't leave the flesh. He's cut off before he can fully explain the side effects, but he does say that the dose that he gives Sweetrobin coming down the mountain should be the last for 6 months at the minimum. And now we see that Sweetrobin has got another dose, a strong dose, and it's only been a month. This is extremely dangerous, and I'm not sure how he's going to manage the rest of the tourney without more doses. We know that Sweetrobin dislikes strangers and loud noises. Watching 14 men, including Harry the heir, who he hates, dance with Sansa is rough by itself. All of the jousting at the melee is likely to be overwhelming, and if something happens to Sansa, when it comes down to it, Sweetrobin is a ticking time bomb, and if he has abilities like Bran does, we may be in store for something interesting. And this is a good place to stop. We will conclude the Alayne sample chapter in part 9. See you then.